if not decades. So this is a famous quote by Eric Schmidt. Many of you might have read it. Basically it says that the amount of data that we're generating today is exorbitant. So before I go on, I just wanted to see if anyone could want to put in some thoughts about what they think, who collects our personal data, why and how, where does it reside, you think, and what is dark data in your opinion. So if you want to just throw in some comments, that'd be great.
Is it like a data that's stuck on our say like network devices like routers or something like that?
Yes, I mean essentially it is part of it is that, and much of it is really the data that is collected by different systems. So if no one wants to really take a stab at it, let me just say that a lot of data, personal data of yours, is essentially collected for compliance purposes. We'll get to that, but and then
thoughts.
Where it resides is it could be anywhere from networks to unstructured data across different devices. Okay, so the agenda is to sort of look at what dark data is what we do. What we don't know is actually really much more than what we do know, and that's what I'm going to get into. What IoT devices are going to bring about eventually, and then is there a threat or an opportunity? Are there opportunities in there? And then we'll look into smart home security and some other examples, and then finally toss some questions. I do want to make this interactive, so I put in some slides where we can talk a little bit about it, and please feel free to jump in whenever you please. So what dark data is really not is what I would start with. It is not, I mean, as sinister as it sounds, it is really not obviously anything related to hackers, hacking, and cybercrime. It is not related to data manipulation or disinformation either. And sadly, it has nothing to do with anything sci-fi, as fun as it might sound. So it's really not fun, although for many people who are in analytics, it may be a lot of fun. And so what it is really is it's collected, ignored, and forgotten data. So ungovernable, and I had a lot of fun with all the letters, all the words which started with UN here. So ungovernable because there was no effort in putting this data. There was really no effort put into what to do with the data when it was being stored, when it was collected, and there is very little idea of how to link it and scrub it to make it useful. And unknown because of the fact that reams of data has been stored over the years, over several mediums, and organizations change, people change, and data gets buried. Unused, of course, because we don't know what exists. And then underrated, undervalued, and unprofitable because if you don't have any handle on the data, you cannot monetize it. And then finally, unsecured, that you can't protect what you don't know exists. Right? So essentially what dark data really is, it's also called dusty data, really is untapped and qualified data. It's archived and forgotten, archived and unstructured. And when we talk about talk about data, we think data in model databases and nice little tables with their relationships defined and secured. But most of the data organizations collect fail to see is really something which fail to have any sense of structure because organizations do not see any value in them. They just collect them because they collect them. And these are like files and pictures, images, emails, briefings, charts. And then just raw data that is collected, as I said, because of compliance purposes. And where they are is also a problem because a lot of times this data is collected across different systems, remote systems, and it never is actually brought in together to make any meaningful, thing out of it, really make any meaningful sense out of it, really. So if you look at the reports on dark data, depending on what report you're looking at, really, it could be anywhere from many reports say it's 55% of many organizations' data is dark, but it could be as much as 90% if you look at places like healthcare and government collection data and financial institutions. So not so smart data, which is all unstructured data to smart data is about 9:1 ratio. So data that you know you have and data that you don't know you have is basically, as I said, it is why do we collect it? Why do we collect it if if the data that you don't know that you have is so much more larger, is because of compliance purposes. And then there is this idea generally, of course, which I call scrapbooking, really, is that to sort of keep everything, keep it local, keep it anywhere really, but keep it so that we could at some point of time sort of make it more meaningful and make it pretty. We will scrub it and make it pretty at some point of time, and that really does not happen, but we just keep on storing it. And storage is getting cheaper and cheaper. That's another reason. Like I said, 55% to 90% of all data is dark because of the fact that we just store data, there's excessive collection of data and excessive reluctance in deletion or selection of data that needs to be stored. And then, of course, the IoT, at the advent of IoT, it would not make it easy at all. So going back to Eric Schmidt's code, what it looks like is that his code might fall really, really short very, very quickly if it has not already, because Statista actually says that over a period of 5 years, we are expecting about 3.5 times more data collection generation. And this is not just, this is dark data, primarily probably dark data. A very small percentage of it might be actually structured data. So who are the digital hoarders? They are healthcare, like I said, most of the healthcare clinics and hospitals and other institutions, financial services and companies, insurance companies, accountants, manufacturing industries have a tremendous amount of data that they collect from their sensors and analog to digital conversions and so forth, which they do not use. About 90% of the data is not used. And why, many legacy systems are just lying around with tons and tons of data in them. And then there are companies which have remote access and multiple media devices that are used by personnel, which obviously mean that lots of the data, including places like ours, where we have data which we don't necessarily bring together in any meaningful form. And then there are mobile workforces and field surveys where they have devices. For example, when I was working with a company called Arbitron, which is a radio ratings company, we would have devices, panel devices, which would be really separate physical devices where data would be collected. And they would just lie in this office in Dallas. And we would pick up information that we would need from it, but we would not really actually scrape the entire data to see what is going on. So something like that means that a lot of data is lying in devices across various offices. And then, of course, IoT devices and networks using IoT devices will add more to the digital hoarding. So going into IoT devices, 5G, massive Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, and all those things. And then we have what are called IOBTs, which is the Internet of Battlefield Things and Internet of Military Things, which are obviously something which Army and other forces are trying already. Now, I don't want to go into what is IoT and what are IoT devices. We all know they're network set of computing devices with small sensors, etc. And they could be anything from a Kindle Fire to switches to sensors on your vehicle. And these devices collect intelligent data and interact with your network. And as of now, we have about 26.66 billion installed bases of IoT devices worldwide as of today. And its projected numbers by 2025 are 75.44 billion. So that's about a threefold increase we're looking at. And then what is also expected is about 9 different sectors, including government, industry, personal use, smart cities, and smart homes, etc., and offices, will be using these devices. And McKinsey predicts about $11.1 trillion per year of economic impact of IoT. So we are looking at an extraordinary amount of, staggering amounts of data, really, residing generally somewhere in the cloud, because that's the idea, that most of this data will be collected in the cloud, not sure where. Will it be structured, which is not a certainty. And then one of the big problems is there was actually a study in 2017 to investigate the impact of IoT security and on IT and line of business. And it revealed that many organizations did not know what was connected to their system. So they don't have an inventory. They can't account for what data is being collected. IoT devices and are basically are unregulated. And basically, IoT devices generally have a tendency to sort of connect to your networks because they have an authentication process, perhaps not really, because they don't really have, they're not very regulated in terms of their design, and they have very poor security. So it's possible that you have devices connected to your network which you do not know of. And they may be bringing in data, I mean, they may be manipulating your data, so we'll not talk about that right now. So then that's basically what I was talking about, IoT and sensor device connectivity. I don't know what's on my network. Dynamic connectivity is cool. What is accounting for it? We do not know what sensors are. And really, when sensors know about each other, talk to each other, perhaps even, but we don't know what's going on. And then IoT, and I forgot to talk about IoT, the Internet of Battlefield things and military things. They are more regulated, definitely. They're more secure authentication. And however, data collection is still a question. Now, I don't want to really talk much about the military use of it, but it can be said that a lot of these military devices are used as wearables and other devices. And if you have a unit which is actually on a disadvantaged network and it is going to interact with each other, the people are going to interact with each other, going to collect data, and when they come back and join the network or join back to a C2, what they're sending back to C2 is just still a very big question. How much data is really being collected and systematically, streamed back is something which we need to, which is worrisome. Now, so what is IoT data? IoT data comes in various forms, a wide range of wide range of real-time data streams that can be, basically in a number of fields and applications. Storage is cheap today. Storage in the cloud is dirt cheap, so we just keep putting all this data into the kind of storage that you have without really having much idea of what is going in there. And then, of course, the whole idea of data and security that I talked about. So could it be the wake-up call, really? Sorry, I went back to a slide. Now, this is just a thought that I thought I would stop here and ask people about what they think about dark data. Why should we be worried? I cannot see the chat, so it would be great if people can just jump in using their mic. Any thoughts about why should we be worried?
This is Trisha. I don't know if we need to be worried right this second, but one of the larger concerns that I look at with regard to like DNA analysis and who's collecting that is that you don't know how and when the data might be useful, and if it's left unsecured and people have access, or entities have access to it, it's that eventually it might be used in ways, like I don't have a reason off the top of my head, but that eventually it could be used in ways that are detrimental. And I also just think that in general, people don't have a good sense of how their data is already used, and so the more that's out there, there's more manipulation around preferences, what kind of things you see when you're online, that sort of stuff. Great. And I think with the health data, like long-term concerns about how that might be used, things for like insurance, care, access to those things.
So good thoughts there, and that's where I was getting at is going for really is big data is not about the data, is what Gary King said. It's about the analytical aspect. He was talking more in terms of what makes big data important is how much analytics that you can run on that. So why should we care and why should we be worried is monetization. Organizations that can analyze all relevant data. This is actually the International Digital Corporation back in 2016 did a little study, and they came up with this idea that about $430 billion could be, organizations could make $430 billion extra in productive gains if they actually analyze all the relevant data and deliver actionable information. The legal repercussions, regulatory repercussions to it, and GDPR is an example. And there are opportunity costs, that is, to we choose to pick one set of data, or you don't really choose to pick one set of data. What have you? I don't need to explain opportunity cost to you, but there are those. And then there's blind spots in analytics, which is perhaps what you were referring to, Tricia, is when we talk about AI quite a bit, but if you have an enormous amount of data which is dark data and which is not structured, how reliable is your analytics and your AI programs? How reliable is your outcome? That's a big question. And then, of course, no one talks about this a lot, but there's a huge environmental impact of it as well, which I would get to. So is it all deaths of despair opportunities, right? And again, if anyone wants to throw in some ideas, great. I just thought about whether it's a value or threat or both. It could be information asset, or it could be a liability. Pardon me. Gosh, I don't know what I have. Pardon me. There you go. It could be an asset or a liability depending on how we treat the data, really. And of course, like I said, and I'm probably going to say it again, can't protect what we don't know exists. And then the other thing is, how do we handle deep layers of untapped data? Can AI help, or is AI poorer due to this? So there's, again, what I was talking about, AI bias, AI accuracy. How does analytics basically deal with this? So talking about that, AI is to dark data, and dark data is to AI, as to say that what are the implications of future analytics, AI, ML, and pardon me, I'm just trying to get my notes in order. So AI ML could come to the rescue. So a lot of times, actually, when you talk about dark data and you should read about it, there are situations where you could say that AI actually can help in organizing this data and making it more meaningful. So there is that. And then AI and IoT, they can keep an eye on each other, as in IoTs will bring in streaming data, and then we could sort of ensure that AI is essentially used for streaming analytics, and we ensure that all the data which is on the fly, analyzed and structured in some manner. And then there is also the idea of data lakes, which is a new concept, sort of, which is this term actually it's basically a storage repository that holds unstructured raw data, but it is on purpose. So Apache Hadoop was the first one, I think, which came up with this idea of object storage, and the data scientists are increasingly using data lakes to describe a large set of data pool of undefined schema and data requirements, and analysts then define their parameters only the time of querying the data. So this is one way to sort of deal with it, with a problem of dark data, and it also provides sandboxes for data scientists. Now, data lakes sometimes for people who have worked on data warehouses and OLAP back in the day, you may have, you may think, what is the difference between the two? And the difference is that, of course, data warehouses were most mature and very secure technology and a proper formal architecture attached to them. They provide for multidimensional analytical queries for computing, swift computing, and so forth. Data lakes, on the other hand, are purposefully unstructured. And then there is also this term of what is called data swamps. Now, data swamps is the opposite of data lakes, is what people talk about, and it is actually similar to dark data, ungoverned and not retrievable, poorly maintained, and does not have any contextual metadata to make it helpful. So I'm just introducing you to a bunch of different terms that could possibly you could come across if you're looking into dark data. And then there is obviously there are ways, other ways to work with it is using something like graph databases, which is again another popular way of looking at data these days. So coming to what do we have about data security here? Data security, I don't want to get into that because that's more of a an issue for data breaches and so forth. But just to show that data dark data may actually be more of a threat than or more vulnerable, make an organization more vulnerable than structured data, because dark data may contain extraordinary amounts of sensitive information that we are not aware of. Data may not be closely monitored, so obviously we don't really. When you have structured data, when you have structured databases, you do have proper monitoring systems, event management, and all that. But when you don't have, we don't know what is on the data, then you're probably not quite sure of what is happening, what data breaches happen. They will go unchecked, and we cannot protect it. So this is where actually I didn't want to go into this. This is where I wanted to actually have an interactive, hopefully an interactive session on what you think in terms of what dark data means when it comes to smart homes, smart vehicles, smart cities. In terms of data storage, data collection, what do we do with it? Any thoughts?
Hi, this is Christy Foran. I'm just curious about if the data is stored locally and if it's untagged or uncurated. I mean, can the local storage provide the kind of contextual metadata that would make this more valuable? So just the fact that you got it from a specific clinic in a specific geographic area with a specific kind of population that it serves, and combining those across may provide value. And then I guess the other side of that is exactly what you said, that really this data is fuel, right? So its value is in collecting it across places. And then what does that mean to the people whose data it is, who don't get the benefit of the outcome? I don't know.
So that's a question about whether data is monetized, as in people are selling you data, or whether it is being used by companies to do proper analytics and make decisions and bring develop policies based on that, which is probably what I was looking at when I was talking about monetizing data. So when it comes to smart homes, smart vehicles, and smart cities, etc., we're talking about enormous amounts of data which can be collected, and where it goes and how it is stored and how what do we do with it is a question which perhaps I cannot answer really, because it's not something which we can. We probably have to think about it and foresee possible issues with this enormous amount of data, and who could possibly take advantage of that, or even perhaps monetize it, right? So that's, I didn't want to really talk too much about that, except for the fact that we need to know how to harness it without actually harming people, and obviously we need to protect it. And then this idea of healthcare, which is, again, I didn't want to talk too much about it, except that what Trisha said a little bit ago is hiding within this amount of data is and this is a quote by Atul Bude of Stanford School of Medicine. He says the amounts of data that we have that we could actually harness in ways which we can actually change the life of a patient or that of the world. So there is enormous amount of healthcare data which again is collected to a large extent for compliance purposes, but also older data of patients which is lying around, and which is not so much about the patients or the people, but essentially about what other information that we can gather from it. Okay, and then we have the impact of environment on the environment. So There is this very nice article with CD Trends where your dark data is killing the planet, and the idea is that dark data is producing more carbon dioxide than 80%, 80 different countries do individually. So what Ravi Rajendran said here is essentially that we're talking about reducing your carbon footprint, but if you're looking at the quick pace at which data centers are being set up across the world, and in Asia and South Asia being a big market for it right now, it is clear that we are going to store enormous amounts of data again, which will not be accounted for, but just because we can store it, because it's cheap to store it, we'll store it, and we will end up creating extraordinary amounts of energy consumption because of that. And so, what are the pressing questions? The pressing questions for me was, what are the policies of what to keep and how long, for how long? So essentially, this idea of doing away with this excessive hoarding capability of or hoarding mentality of many organizations, and to see what policies can drive them to ensure that they keep certain amounts of data, and then get rid of the others, and then make sure that that data is actually kept only for a particular period of time. And then harnessing versus hoarding, again, consolidation of data. We're talking about classifying early and often, redundancy elimination, again, early and often. And then this is where AI can actually help, and doing this would help our analytics and the outcomes of our own algorithms. And then who else is listening and caring? Most of the software companies are coming up with ideas about how to do this. AWS has there's 3 Cassandra different ways of storing and making storing data and using data easier. And then they're the big data peoples is what I call them, and there's the people who are working with Elasticsearch, Kafka, etc. And then there are the machine learning peoples, that is the dark data analytics. There are specific sort of talent and sort of skills that are required for dark data analytics, and those are the people who are making sure that they are asking for help, and they're actually bringing this whole idea of dark data into a general discussion. And that's essentially what I had. So if anyone else, anyone has some thoughts, I would love to hear them.
Hi, Padma. This is Trisha again. I had to step away for a moment because of a child meltdown in the background, but so maybe you discussed it, and I apologize. But do the tech companies themselves care about sort of all of this kind of dark data? I mean, I feel like we're struggling to get social media companies to care about direct and other sorts of impacts, like Facebook and sort of the spread of conspiracy theories, and we can't get them to, or Twitter, and we can't get those companies to shut down sort of more actively harmful types of behavior. So is there any interest from the companies themselves for addressing security issues around dark data, around sort of these like legacy I forget what you call them, data sets, or or is it just like, well, it's kind of like trash or waste to them, like it's just a byproduct of what they've done and not really worth putting effort into addressing?
Well, I mean, most IT companies, if you ask me, are actually looking at, first of all, there are companies like AWS and Hadoop and others, and IBM to a large extent, who are looking at solutions for how to tackle dark data, and how what are the different options of making them more, I mean, like I said, more useful, obviously monetarily, and as well as in terms of policies, etc. And that's where the whole concept of data lakes and what are data swamps, data lakes, how do you distinguish between them, what kind of metadata is used, and then obviously bringing in the talent for data scientists. That's the big issue. One of the issues which many companies face is they do not have the resources, they do not have the computing power, they do not have the talent for handling this data, and they for the for a lot of them they don't really know what they have to start with. So it's just something it's a big blob. So so there are the IT companies obviously are looking at lots of solutions. The solutions that I mentioned, Cassandra and Kafka, and all those are really about tackling any kind of large big data issues. But of course, big data, a big chunk of big data is the dark data that is not being used as of now. Um, I, I hope that I've answered your question there. Yeah. Is there any other thoughts? I do see some questions in the chat now. Hold on. So that's the thing. I mean, the reason why it is Shanti, your question as to do these data stay dark because they are not easy to monetize. Any thoughts on true information content of dark data? The issue with much of the dark data, there are two different things, of course. One of them, as I said, is the collection of data, because many organizations and companies are complying with requirements, regulatory requirements of what kind of data is to be collected and stored for how long. Financial institutions, healthcare particularly. And the other, and then they just don't know what to do with it. They don't really have the bandwidth, the kind of talent or the resources to actually look into it and do anything with it. The other problem is, of course, the collection of data which is dispersed. There is a distributed data collection, and it could be anything from field surveys to remote personnel, and then these are data. This is data which is you sort of in your emails, in your presentations, in your spreadsheets. Lots of unstructured data which is captured by many people, but it doesn't, and it can be monetized if there is a way to sort of, again, make sense of it and store it in the right places, have some sort of metadata information which makes it useful, and which requires data scientists, people who are dark data and analysts or analytical, I don't know, talents really. I think they call themselves dark data analysts who know how to tackle this kind of a problem, and then move that data to maybe even to a data lake, as I said, which is a little more manageable because they are deliberately created unstructured data. Terry's question, dark data and dark web may be somewhat misleading names. They make it sound like it's on child pornography and smuggled nuclear weapon plants. Not really, actually. It does, and that's the reason why I talked about why it's not criminal. It's actually pretty boring. It's just a bunch of data which is nobody knows anything about. The reason why it's this term dark data came about several years ago, and I think it was by Gartner, if I'm not wrong, that it was coined by Gartner. And yes, it does. And that's the reason why I started off by saying what it is not. It really isn't sinister. And dark web itself is actually not very sinister either, because the perception obviously is that it is all about smuggling and child pornography and selling ransomware. But it really is also used by the intelligence community, and many social media and other platforms have a dark web handle where they actually do provide other kind of data, and they are actually used by CIA and others, those social media outlets, to monitor criminal activity. Yeah, sorry, digress from the main topic, but any other questions? So that's all I have, Shushandi. I hope this was useful in some way. I think Ashanti has stepped away. Z?
Yeah, he's still there, but he might have taken that call he mentioned.
Okay. Am I open for any other thoughts? Anybody wants to throw in some ideas or something they have looked
What
at?
would Rand's role be if like, is there work here for Rand to, I mean, I know we already, not we being like other people, not me, but are working on IoT or working on, you know, all sorts of data related projects, security, but like what?
I mean, this is what we probably. If we were to work on dark data, the idea is to look at what is missing in terms of how this data can be actually made useful to leverage machine learning and AI, and then what do we do with analytical analysis of streaming data, which is what IoT and connectivity might and future 5G connectivity will bring about. It's not that we don't have it now; it's just that it's going to grow exponentially, and what we're going to do about that. And those are areas which we can definitely pitch to work on. And we have obviously lots of data scientists, statisticians who can also bring in their idea about what data lakes and data swarms and data security, and with in terms of these different concepts of how data is stored, we can definitely look into that. And then we are right now, in fact, we have looked at how, for example, for DHS, we did DHS has several different components which have their own way of storing data, and how do they integrate all of this so that if somebody, an end user at, let's say, the border wants to look up someone, they have actually consolidated data. And we looked into that for DHS, and we looked into how graph databases can be used. Not that it is dark data particularly, but that same concept could be used for dark data as well.
I wonder if there's interest in or work around the other end of this data collection process in terms of consumer rights or understanding of their data. Someone had told me an anecdote about these smart beds that actually store all of this pressure information from your mattress, which is then ended up being, a security issue, especially for the military in terms of when people were sleeping. So, so I'm wondering about, policies or laws associated with people opting into these things in terms of their understanding what data may be available in the future.
So that's something. I mean, here is an issue we probably have when it comes. GDPR essentially deals with that, but I don't think in the US we have it quite that simple because it's just that the data which is collected is whoever collects the data owns the data in the United States. So now if you have a bed and it has some sort of telemetry or some sort of way of actually sending back data to the manufacturer, that perhaps is still there must be some legal regulatory issues around it. I'm not entirely certain. I'm not a regulatory policy person when it comes to data, at least. But on a large scale, I think data, that's the problem we are facing with social media and other as well, is that when data is collected by, they give you this little disclaimer which most of us don't read, and then it is, if they collect data, they own the data, and that's a policy which needs to be worked on if we really have to come up with anything even close to what GDPR is attempting to do, which is also quite a bit of a challenge even for them. And then obviously the big question also is that not knowing what is in your company's, when you capture so much data and you don't know what is there, you don't know what has been breached, what kind of data has been lost, and that not accounting for the data that you have would create other issues. It's almost like, and like I said, in many cases, companies do not really know what kind of devices are joining their network. They don't have an inventory. They don't have a way to figure out what the security aspects of, and IoT devices are notoriously badly designed, and there are no regulatory policies, at least not yet. Regulatory policies around their design. And so when they join your network, you may not know, and they may not register them. Even if they register them, what data they're bringing, we do not know. So there are, I mean, those are things which RAN can help out actually figuring out, I suppose. Anyone else? I do have a bunch of good, nice articles on this, and I could probably sort of post them on our chat. And happy to talk about this further if anybody's interested. I think Shandi is still missing, so if anyone wants to drop off, I am actually done. So thank you.
Thanks, Padma.
Thank you.
Thanks.